We've been hearing some rumors about the Switch 2 for a good few months now at the very least, but the rumor mill's really been getting kicked into high gear as of the last week or two, so I figured now was about time for me to throw my own 2 cents into the ring and just kind of give my thoughts both on what I think about the validity of some of these rumors, as well as just my general thoughts and desires for the Switch 2 as a whole. Because as of late, it feels like I can't go a day or two without seeing another new rumor about the Switch 2, either contradicting an old one or saying something new I hadn't heard before or whatever. So, without much further ado, let's just get right into it. And the first thing I want to talk about is actually something that has been kind of going back and forth lately, which is the supposed launch date of the actual console. For a while now, I think most people have assumed that the console is going to launch in 2025 and probably be a repeat of the original Switch launch, where they launched it in March instead of launching it in the holiday season of the previous year. However, there have been some more recent rumors claiming that the current plan is to actually launch in 2024 in the holidays, and I could kind of see both. My initial gut reaction is to say that that seems unlikely since we haven't gotten any official announcements yet. And I did some quick Googling to double check my dates. And if you go back to look at some of their older consoles, like the Wii U was announced at least a full year before they released that console. And the same was true of the 3DS and a few of their other consoles. However, if we look at the more recent examples, like with the Switch, while we had heard about it and we had a lot of rumors for a while, we didn't get that official reveal trailer until October of 2016 when the console launched in March of 2017, which is only a 5 month head start. So, in theory, if they're going to do a repeat of that kind of strategy, then we could still be seeing it launch this year, even though we haven't gotten any announcements yet. But that said, that does mean that we are due for an announcement very soon, and I would be shocked if it would be releasing this year and we don't get an announcement by like at least like mid-June ish. Like I'm willing to bet that if we are going to get a release this year by holiday, then the next major Nintendo Direct is going to have a Switch 2 like reveal trailer. If it doesn't, then my bet's on 2025 because at this point we're getting really close to that threshold where Nintendo needs to start ramping up marketing before they can really afford to actually launch this console. And that's the other thing is that I think Nintendo's learned a couple of things from the last couple of major console releases that I would hope that they apply to this one, because with the Switch they did learn that like holidays aren't everything. The Switch launched pretty well, especially thanks to Breath of the Wild, of course, but in general it still launched really really well despite coming out in March, which is like not when any console ever comes out. But on the other hand, we also learned from the Wii U that launching a console without a ton of first party games is a death sentence, even if it does launch during the holidays. So it feels like both of those lessons are probably pointing towards a more lax release date schedule where they're going to wait to release it until they know they have the games to support it, because they don't want a repeat of the Wii U and they probably want a repeat of the Switch. So if they could get another killer app like Breath of the Wild to launch for the console and not have to worry about like launching to an empty store shelf in terms of game selection, then like if that requires them to wait a few extra months, then they're probably going to wait a few extra months, which is why I'm personally leaning towards an early 2025 release. Like I said, unless we get an announcement like in the next month or like month and a half, then it's probably 2025 in my opinion. But what about the actual console itself? Like, what can we expect from the Switch 2 or whatever it ends up being called? Please do not call it the Switch U. But yeah, so a couple of minor things that I think, like, I don't think any of this is confirmed, but it just seems so plausible that I would be shocked if it wasn't. 1080p screen, I think that makes sense. I mean, 720p was already kind of like, whoa, really? On when the Switch came out in 2017, I feel like 1080 is like the smallest resolution that they could realistically go for without getting completely laughed at. Um, Another one that I've seen a lot is magnetic Joy-Cons, which I think is an interesting solution, because one problem I've definitely noticed, because I still have a launch Switch from 2017, and due to the extensive use I've put that thing through, the Joy-Con, like, locking mechanism has definitely eroded a bit, and that has made it almost impossible to play the console in handheld mode. And so as a result, like if I try to hold the console up, the weight of the center console is basically pulling it out of the Joy-Con's grip. And like even if it doesn't completely fall out, it still will often cause the Joy-Cons to slip just enough so that they stop registering as being connected to the console, and then I just completely disconnect the controllers. And it's really annoying and frustrating. And like honestly, if I were to switch over to just something that I would hope they would do, like I kind of just wish that they would just sort of flip the console upside down, if that makes sense. Because if you flip it upside down, then you don't need a locking mechanism to hold the Joy-Cons in place, because the weight of the console would be pushing it into the grip of the Joy-Cons even harder instead of trying to pull it out. And then on top of that, that would also mean that the charging port would be on the top, which means that if you're playing it just on its own, like with a kickstand. That way you can still have it plugged in while still playing it in kickstand mode without it, because like that was always like a weird design flaw with the original Switch, is that because the port was on the bottom, it was almost like an Apple mouse where you can't use it and charge it at the same time. Like it was always kind of a weird, annoying little design flaw. So like having the entire console be upside down would kind of solve that problem. But even if they don't do that, having the Joy Cons have some kind of magnets in them to hopefully hold them in place a little bit better. I mean, who knows how long those magnets will last, but I guess that's an improvement. Obviously, some other things are like, better Joy-Con designs to improve stick drift, or rather get rid of it, I should say. Definitely hoping for something like that. Also, apparently it'll still be compatible with old Joy-Cons, which is kind of unexpected. But I guess understandable. Like, I obviously expected it to be at least compatible with the Pro controller, although I do wish that Nintendo would embrace analog triggers. Like, it's weird that they did that for the GameCube and then just stopped for every console after that. Like, what does Nintendo have against analog triggers? Can we just get some analog triggers back, please? But, regardless, all the controllers being compatible, that makes sense. And speaking of compatibility, I would be shocked if the console's not backwards compatible. Like, we've obviously got a few rumors saying that it will be. Nintendo would be insane to not make this thing backwards compatible. Like, there's so many really, really good games on the Switch, and that would put the Switch 2 off to a great start if you could just access your entire Switch library, physical or digital, just on launch day. Like that would probably be reason enough for a lot of people to cash out and get a new Switch, because like right off the bat, there's so many Nintendo games that I wish I could play at like a rock solid 60 FPS. The two Zelda games run pretty well on the console, but there are a lot of areas where like the frame rate kind of dips a little bit, and even then you're usually only getting 30 FPS in the good areas. So if we could get that at a rock solid 60, that would be great. And then there's also all the third party games that run just not great, because like Nintendo's good at making their own games run well. Like Mario Odyssey looks like pretty goddamn beautiful, all things considered, given the hardware that it's running on. But games like Age of Calamity, which wasn't made by Nintendo, like that game is practically unplayable with how bad the frame rate is. So like if we could get just backwards compatibility so we could play those kinds of games but at a usable frame rate, that would 100% like sell, I think, so many people on the console. Plus, another thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is just how insanely valuable Mario Kart 8 is as a game. If the Nintendo Switch 2, or whatever it's called, can play Mario Kart 8, that's already a huge boon. Because like if you Google the best-selling games of all time, not Nintendo games, not racing games, just best-selling games, period, Mario Kart 8 is number 6 on that list. It is in the top 10 best-selling games ever. Like, that's insane. So, like, having Mario Kart 8 playable on the new console, I think is going to be a big motivator for Nintendo to make this thing backwards compatible. Because, like, that would be insane to not do that. Like, hell, I would not be surprised if we just never get a Mario Kart 9 and we just keep getting updates to Mario Kart 8, because, like, that gravy train just keeps on rolling. It's going to be insane whenever Nintendo tries to actually make a sequel, but that'll be a video for another day, I guess. Now, to actually talk about the console's power itself, for that matter, I mean, to be honest, I don't think the Switch 2 needs to be that much more powerful. And a recent rumor that's been going around a lot is that the power upgrade will only be a quote unquote conservative hardware evolution compared to the Switch, which a lot of people are taking to mean that it'll like be barely any stronger. I think that some people are taking that maybe a little bit out of context. Reading through the rumor itself, in my opinion, I think that they're more referring to the fact that like it's more of a normal standard hardware upgrade as opposed to what Nintendo usually does, which is random shit. Because like if you think about it, Nintendo, especially over the last like decade or two, like you got stuff like the Wii and the DS and the Wii U and like all of these like crazy hardware changes where it's like, oh, this thing has two screens now, or it's got motion controls and stuff like that. So like I think that what they mean by conservative hardware evolution is that the Switch 2 will be like the Switch fundamentally. They're not going to add some kind of crazy new gimmick, like it's not going to have two screens or three Joy-Cons or some crazy stuff like that. Like, I think they just mean that it's going to be a normal console upgrade, which means that, like, the actual power level is left to be determined. You know, it's probably not going to be like the insanely strongest thing ever, of course. This is still Nintendo we're talking about, but it's still going to be like just a Switch 2 ultimately. And I still would not be shocked if they just call it Switch 2. Um, but for that matter, another big thing is that the console will probably be using DLSS technology. And to be fair, I don't even need a rumor to guess that one because that's probably the biggest new tech that has come out since the Switch originally launched that Nintendo should probably be salivating over because functionally DLSS is magic computer juice that you can sprinkle onto games to make them run at higher frame rates and resolutions. Like there's no way that the Switch 2 will be able to natively handle 4K output for like all of these games and whatnot, especially like brand new Switch 2 games. But if they make it so that when docked, it enables DLSS mode for all of its games by default, that's probably how they could do it to make it so that it could actually output 4K resolutions in docked mode. And that makes a lot of sense to me. And that would be a really great way of making like a huge difference between handheld and docked. Because like if handheld's going to be 1080p, that means docked has got to be at least a little bit higher than that. And the obvious answer would be 4K. But like I said, there's no way they're doing that without DLSS. So I'm pretty certain that it's going to be using DLSS in order to sort of upscale its resolutions. Finally, the last big thing I remember hearing some rumors about is the battery. Because to be fair, with the original Switch, the battery life was probably its biggest flaw. I remember even predicting this before the console even first came out. I figured that the battery life was probably going to be its biggest problem. And yeah, like when you're playing a game like Zelda, you're lucky to get like 3 hours out of it, if that. Though to be fair, when the OLED came out, I did hear that they did dramatically improve the battery life by at least a little bit. So I imagine just improvements in battery technology alone over the past 7-ish years will probably lead to a better battery life, especially when playing backwards compatible games on it. Um, but there's another rumor that says that they might supposedly underclock the console when in handheld mode in order to further improve battery life. I imagine what this probably means functionally is stuff like capping games to 30 FPS and whatnot whenever you're playing in handheld, and then when you're docking it and you don't have to worry about battery life anymore, then it'll probably spin back up to full power and run at like the full 4K DLSS, 60 FPS, that whole kit and caboodle. And then that would make a pretty functional difference between handheld and docked mode as well, which I think makes sense. But yeah, they do definitely need to improve on the battery life for the next one, because like it is a portable console, but you really can't play it for that long in portable mode, which kind of defeats the purpose. But yeah, that hopefully they improve upon that quite a bit. We'll see though. Hopefully we can get a little bit more direct rumors, but I think that sort of 30 1080 on handheld and then 64K with DLSS. That's probably the best bet for how it's gonna play out, in my opinion at least. So yeah, to talk about my final thoughts on all this, I honestly don't think most people are going to need a lot out of the Switch 2. Like, I think that the Switch as a concept is already one of the smartest things Nintendo has ever done. Like, combining their handheld and home console divisions just solves so many problems for them. They no longer need to worry about their console, like, being compared hardware-wise to, like, the Xbox and PlayStation, at least not as much, because it's a lot more justifiable to have weaker hardware when you're dealing with a portable handheld. And then on top of that, they no longer have to make games for both consoles. 'Cause that was like always a huge problem. Like a big reason why people got super tired of the new Super Mario Bros. Series is because they had to make one for every single console they produced. And so for like 4 years in a row, we got a new Super Mario Bros. Game because they released one for the Wii, the Wii U, the DS, and the 3DS. And so by combining their home console and portable markets, they only have to make games for one console, which means they can combine all of their resources and spend twice as much energy on every single game, which I think has shown in over the course of the last decade or so with how many great Switch titles we've gotten straight from Nintendo. And like, I don't really need a huge hardware upgrade or any kind of big new gimmicks or anything. I just want a Switch that runs at a stable frame rate and I can port my entire Switch library forwards onto and just call it a day. Like, that's all I really want. Give me 60 FPS, give me DLSS upscaling, and give me a halfway decent battery and Joy-Cons that don't fall out every time I try to hold the console, and I will be happy, personally. And really, the only other thing to talk about is the potential launch titles, and to be fair, I do think Nintendo is in kind of an awkward spot on that regard, because they've already used a lot of their major franchises fairly recently, or they have, like, stuff that's really hard to top. Because, like, they just put out Tears of the Kingdom, so there's no way they're going to be doing a Zelda game at launch, or even anywhere in the first couple of years. There's Smash Brothers has been out for a while, but, like, how are you going to one-up Smash Ultimate when it has, like, 80-plus characters and all this DLC and, like, all these insane things in one game? Like, most realistic thing I see for Smash is happening is just porting it forward to the next console and then maybe throwing in another wave of DLC. And then same thing with Mario Kart. Like, we're definitely way overdue for a new Mario Kart game, but Mario Kart 8 sold so insanely well, and they just did another massive round of DLC. So, like, again, are we really going to expect a Mario Kart 9 to one-up Mario Kart 8 when it has, like, 96 tracks in it? Like, what are they going to do? And then there are, like, other franchises, of course, like Metroid Prime 4 we've heard about for so long. So, like, maybe that could finally be announced as a launch title, but that doesn't really feel like a system seller. To me, that seems like something that would come out, like, a couple of months after launch as, like, icing on the cake. There's Kirby, which, again, I love Kirby games, but they don't really... I don't feel like they're a system seller franchise, necessarily. They could bring back an older franchise like Star Fox, just give us a normal Star Fox game, not like this weird stuff we got with Zero. But again, like, is that really gonna push consoles out the door? I don't think so. So the only franchise I can really think that would be big enough to actually sell consoles would be a new 3D Mario game. We did just get a Mario platformer, yes, but that was a 2D platformer with Mario Wonder. We haven't gotten a 3D Mario game since Odyssey, I think, apart from, like, that weird Bowser's Fury expansion to 3D World. So I think we're overdue for a new 3D Mario in this vein of Odyssey. And Odyssey, while it was a pretty big game, it's not impossible to top it. So I feel like we could easily get, like, a mind-blowing 3D Mario as a launch title, and that seems like the most likely option to be, like, our day one system seller. Not to mention that apparently, after doing some Googling, 2025 is going to be Mario's 40th anniversary, so if we are going to get that 2025 release date for the Switch 2, then that would kind of line up with that, and maybe they could even launch it on March 10th, make it Mario Day, have the main launch title be a 3D Mario game, maybe even throw in some special skins for the console to commemorate it and everything. So, like, that could be a whole thing on its own that they could do to try and, like, help push consoles out the door. So that's my prediction, is we're going to get a major announcement for a brand new, huge 3D Mario game, and then that'll be our day one system seller. But, I'm always curious what you guys have to say, so as always, I'm happy to continue the conversation down in the comments below, so feel free to let me know your thoughts on what you think the next Switch launch titles are going to be, or the Switch 2 launch titles are going to be, I should say, as well as your opinions on some of these rumors and what you think about the Switch 2. Like, do you think that the rumors are plausible? I think that most of what we've seen so far is pretty plausible. Honestly, like I said, Nintendo doesn't have to do a lot to impress people, I think. We just want a better Switch, really, at the end of the day. But like I said, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you like the video, make sure to leave me a like. If you want to see me make more videos like this in the future, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so that you can get notified when I make more videos like this in the future. But Yeah, twisting my own tongue here. But anyways, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.